This is Chapter 3, Section 5, Cultural Diversity and Similarity. As we are going through the information today, I recommend that you take notes so that you will have them for your check for understanding as well as for your test at the end of this chapter. So cultural change is something that all cultures experience, and our culture in the United States and America has also changed over time. So let's think about some examples. How has our culture changed over the past 50 years? Well, a couple of things are, one, we are more connected to people and information because we have new technology that allows us to communicate with other people in a faster way. We have more access to higher education. More people are able to get educated because of the accessibility we have to universities and two-year colleges. More women work outside the home, so we have fewer women staying home and being housewives and more women working out in the economy, and therefore we also see more children enrolled in public education and also in other child care programs. There's also much more cultural diversity. People can date and marry people from different economic, racial, and ethnic backgrounds, and that was not possible 100 years ago. So all these things are examples of ways in which our culture has changed over time. If you look at other cultures around the world, you will also see changes over time within those societies as well. So why does this happen? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. The first reason we're going to talk about is discovery. Discovery is the process of finding something that already exists. So, only up until recently have women really been able to participate in professional athletics. And we can all point out, too, that even now, male athletics still get a lot more recognition. They have a bigger following nationwide than women's sports. However, women being capable of playing these sports is not something that is new. It's just something that has become more popular and widespread for viewing. So the example I have here is the USA women winning the World Cup in soccer. So these women and women in general throughout the course of history may have always had this ability to be this athletically inclined, but only recently have been given the opportunity and been recognized by other parts of our country as being worthy of having this recognition. The second reason we're going to talk about is invention, creation of something new. So we all can probably relate to this. Cell phones allow us to connect with other people and get information quickly. This is a relatively new change in culture. 10, 15 years ago, cell phones were kind of still a newer item. Maybe didn't have the connectability that they do now with like they do on smartphones. And even 20, 25 years ago, cell phones were very rare. We didn't see them quite as often as we do now. And so this invention has really changed our lives in our culture as well as our country. Diffusion, the borrowing of aspects of culture from other cultures. And again, this is something very common in the United States. Certain foods become trendy or popular when they're brought over from other areas of the world. So examples like tacos, pizza, hamburgers, sushi, while many of these things once brought over to the United States may have more of an American twist to them. If you go to Taco Bell and you get a taco, it's not like the real taco you would get if you were to visit a Latin American country, but it is still this diffusion or borrowing certain things from other cultures and integrating them into our own culture. Social diversity exists in all societies. Some of this is a result of social categories, and social categories are groups that share a social characteristic like age, gender, and religion. So if you talk about teenagers would fit into a social category. It's a group of people that share the characteristic of being within those teen years. Gender, male or female, those would also be social categories because they have this commonality between them and other people of the same gender. Religion is another example. So people who practice Christianity or people who practice Judaism or Islam, all of them would be social categories because they can kind of be grouped together based on this characteristic of their faith. But now we have to kind of take a turn and talk about the difference between subcultures and countercultures. And first we need to define what they are. So a subculture is a part of the dominant culture, but differs from it in some important aspects. So a subculture is not something necessarily that is dangerous to the rest of society. Usually it's a group of people who are able to kind of cling together based on some things that they may have in common with each other. So it may be a common heritage. It may be a common taste in music or talent. And so these people kind of cling to each other and create almost their own culture within a larger culture. So the example here on the left, this is Chinatown in New York City. So oftentimes when Chinese immigrants come to the United States, they might choose to live in a community like Chinatown because they're around people who understand their language, their culture, their lifestyle. They're still able to practice that in many ways, but still also live within the larger society of American culture. Circus people is another example. And while circuses are, the number of circuses are diminishing, there was a point in time where it was very popular throughout the United States to have circuses traveling around, and a lot of the people who joined the circus were people who felt rejected by society for various reasons. And circuses would travel around and try to find people who they would consider as spectacles and put them in front of an audience for a variety of reasons. And so it could be, their height, it could be their weight, it could be that they have some type of genetic abnormality or something like that that makes them stand out from other people. And so all those people, because of feeling that rejection from society, might cling to each other to create their own community or their own culture. So that would create what's called the circus culture among the circus people. And the image you see here on the right-hand side, this is actually an image of a group of people that did participate in a circus. And more specifically, if you have seen the musical The Greatest Showman, this is supposed to be an image of the actual people who really were in that circus. And if you've seen that musical, it's based on a true story. And these were the people it was trying to represent in the video. And finally, musicians. So this is just another example. A lot of times musicians may cling to each other and kind of create their own culture among themselves because they have a lot of other aspects of their life in common, and oftentimes also do feel as if they are not part of the dominant culture. Counterculture, on the other hand, is a subculture deliberately and consciously opposed to certain central beliefs or attitudes of the dominant culture. And this is different than a subculture because a subculture exists alongside the larger culture, whereas a counterculture is so against the normal and general culture that they're opposed to it, and sometimes they even try to cause harm to the dominant culture. So an example here would be like prison culture. Another example would be any time that you see a cult that is created and maybe people living on a compound to create their own community separate from the dominant community. Oftentimes those are considered countercultures. So now we need to talk about ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism really relates back to people often feeling that their particular ways of living should be adopted by others. So this kind of so much pride basically within their own culture that they feel as though they need to, that other people should also support that and accept that as their own culture. So they might think that people should have a similar religion, or they might think that people should attend similar schools or join a particular country club. And it's considered ethnocentrism when you are judging others in terms of your own cultural standards. So if somebody can't afford to be a member of that country club, someone who experiences ethnocentrism might look down on them because of their inability to join that country club. Or if they go to a different school, someone who is ethnocentric may think that that person maybe doesn't have the same or proper education, may think that their education is inferior to their own. And the same thing applies to religion. Somebody who is ethnocentric and thinks that everybody should be their religion, to the point of really judging others because of their not being a member of that particular faith. So does ethnocentrism help or hurt society? So you're going to take a moment now and complete the check for understanding. And within the check for understanding, there's a question about this. So I want you to think about what we've mentioned about ethnocentrism. Is it only bad? Are there some good things as well? So take a minute to answer those questions, and then you'll be done with this lesson for today.